Hello everyone, welcome back to Sharp Cuts. My name is Garrett May alongside Josh Nickel. As always, welcome back to the show. Excited for the show today. We got a few things to talk about that we've prepped in advance. Unbelievable, I know, Josh. Today we've got a great guest, Eric Simon. Welcome back to the show. We had you on the show before, and I completely blew it, and we lost all evidence of that show. So welcome back. Are you happy to be here, or are you still pissed?
You know what? I had to decline you guys a couple of times just because there was no sense of reliability in there. But I've taken a look at your guys' data procedures. I see the redundancy.
Okay.
You've got multiple servers, so I feel confident that this valuable interview will be kept. So
that's right. You had to smack us down a few times, say, no, I can't come because you guys blew it last time. So our bad there. So Josh, thanks for contributing so far, by the way. So let's jump into things right away. Topic today, Team Canada has recently announced a new head coach for the men's program here in Canada. If you're not Canadian, sorry, we're talking about Canadian volleyball. And it's Ben Josephson, the head coach of the Trinity Western men's volleyball program for the last, I don't know how many years, but it feels like as long as I can remember, he's been the coach there. Very successful program, Canadian guy hopping in to take over the reins after Glenn Hogue kind of decided that, he's not going to do it anymore, still coaching pro in Turkey though. I figured we could just talk about the thoughts because I know I definitely have some. I do want to preface this though by saying, I think we can say we all like Ben. He's a great guy, very respectful, has had a lot of success. So any criticisms is not at this guy, Ben, because he's a great person, but just the whole system in general. So where do we want to start, boys? What are we feeling?
Well, for the listeners, why this is such a big deal, I have it in front of me, Garrett. Glenn took over the program in 2006. He first stepped away in 2016 when Antigua came in, and then when Stefan Antigua had to step away, it was Glenn who came back in, right? So it's been Glenn's program since 2006. So that's why it's kind of a big deal that, one, Glenn is stepping aside and someone new is going to come in, and two, we hired a Canadian, which I think is awesome.
Actually, on that note, is anyone else just like, how can you have somebody not from your nation be the coach of your national team? Like that is always, and it's not just volleyball, but that is always just blowing my mind.
For sure.
Wait a minute. There's a German soccer coach coaching the England soccer team. Like,
I feel like it should be a rule almost. Like,
if the team has to be Canadian. Sense to me.
Yeah.
Hold on. You're not from the country. I'm sure he has a passport now, but that rule is always just blowing my mind. I'm like, that makes no sense in all sports, not just volleyball.
Well,
the biggest one that caught me off guard was a Finn was coaching Russia at the Olympics, and Russia has like a ton of volleyball coaches in a pro league. Like they couldn't find a local guy that the Finnish guy was more qualified than them.
100%. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't get it, and I'm glad that we went in the direction of Canadian. That's probably the biggest pro for me is because when our national teams think about making coaching decisions, it's always a question mark like, okay, where are we going to go with this? I'm sure it is for them too. Like, I'm sure it's not an easy job picking from everybody in the world, but I'm glad we ended up with the Canadians, so that feels good. But I do feel a little bit weird though about the step from university coach to national team head coach. Like, I feel like it seems like a natural step, but there's a big piece missing there, which is kind of the pro adult league thing. Like, and maybe it goes to like how few Canadian pro coaches we have coaching overseas. Like, I don't even know how many do we like. I can't even think of one.
I'm kind of aligned with that too, Garrett. Like, I would say, I think one of the first things he needs to kind of adopt is have some sort of international presence on some sort of pro team in Europe or where else, just to, one, valuable experience for him at that next level, but two, and I think this was super beneficial with Glenn and our national team, was you get to take a few of your own players and now you're coaching them year round as opposed to just those couple of months in the summer. So especially being a new coach to that team, you want to be, if you're going to be adopting a new system, you want to get as much time with some of your players as possible. So I think for me, I would love to be able to see him try to get an international job, have those extra hours of coaching that high level under his belt.
So I'm going to take the other side here, and if we have any American listeners, or maybe you're on my side, or maybe you're going to roll your eyes, but the U.S. coach John Sabrazza, university level coach, and I don't know if they think that cost them at the Olympics or if it helped them. So it has been done before, and I think Benjo, out of all the U Sports coaches, does have an international presence. The Trinity guys are as pro-ready as you get. They have a guy from Trinity on every team we have. If you pay attention to some of the clubs in Europe, like it seems like Luxembourg always has a Trinity guy, so it seems like he has a pipeline to that club. He probably knows the style of play a little bit, where I think the benefits of having a Canadian outweigh a good international coach from a sense of, yeah, the men's game is a little bit different and managing Garrett's totally different, but he's got a development system. And I think the one flaw in Canada we usually have, and we've seen it on the women's side before Shannon stepped in, is people from outside of Canada don't understand our sports system. They don't understand how kids grow up. They don't understand CCAA and U Sports. So they try to always blow it up or tweak the system or change it a little bit, where Benjo is a U Sports guy. So he's going to know what the coaches go through. He's not going to be like poking at them saying, oh, the development system here, we need to change everything. He knows the coaches. He knows how kids get to the national team. So I think he brings a lot of benefits with the big glaring one, Garrett, I agree, without the international experience, but he's also coached our teams. Like Trinity went to some event here in the fall to represent Team Canada, right? So he's been around international volleyball, just never in the head chair, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying I would hold that against him, but I would say I think that is a valuable piece he needs to pick up. And I think, like, you know, I would say my primary reason for that is being able to coach some of your teammates year round. I think that is more important in my eyes than just, you know, that international experience, because yeah, like I'm looking at some of the U Sport history. It looks like he's won CIs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times since being there. They're always one of the top teams in the country. Like I don't think there's any arguing the guy has exceeded what was expected of him at the U Sport level. So yeah, I think it's a totally reasonable pick, but I would say I think to help and support the program of the new national team, getting a head coaching job in one of the pro teams somewhere in Europe or one of the other countries, I think that would be just extremely valuable.
See, I hadn't even thought of that, Eric. Like saying, hey, yeah, this is our guy. But then saying, hey, as part of this, let's get you going and get you involved and take you to the next level. Like, they're part of a new quad. Like, yeah, you'll come, you'll help our programs. You know all these young guys coming in because half of them were on your team. But then also you played against these guys, so coming in, you're going to be all right. But then let's add that piece there where maybe we can get you some international experience, like coach some of these other teams. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about that. If that ends up being what happens, I think I feel way better about this decision than I do at the moment.
Like, I don't think anybody would say that this is going to be a rebuilding cycle for Team Canada. Like, I think there's expectations of making Paris, going there, and, you know, if they can make that push past the quarterfinals, like, huge success. So that being said, like, where are your starters going to be during most of the year? They're going to be in some other foreign country playing volleyball. And if you can have them on your team, you know, being able to adopt systems that you're going to be running in 3 years' time, like, I think that's the big thing, is you're not talking 3 years away, not 4. And if there's going to be, you know, depending on how radical of changes you're planning to make in the formatting and the system and the style of play, you want to get as many hours with them as possible.
Yeah. So let's look at examples, right? Because Glenn's done this. Like, he's coached Gord before. He's coached Jay. Shawan was on Antigua's team. Like, it has happened before.
Didn't he have TJ as well for a bit?
Probably. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. That's just off the top of my head. But it does happen in bunches, but not the whole team. We're talking 2 or 3 guys a year, right? So is that more valuable than Ben leaving his full-time job, his family? He's got kids. Like, he's got a lifestyle set up here, and he's built one of the best programs in U Sports, right?
Well,
so does
he's
him
going to
going
have to do that anyway, though, Josh. Like,
but does him going to Germany mean he has a better coaching experience than him coaching at Trinity? Like, they already play a pro style. Like, I'm not sure. Asking him to move his family. Like,
I think that piece is pretty clear. Like, with the jump between our U Sport program, even from the best team to the national team level, like, we're not talking B team, FISU game. We're talking like Olympic caliber player is a huge jump. Like, how many guys go from our league to play pro? Very, very few. So
No. I'm going to challenge that right away. Since your era, different. Since the guys after you, Stephen Marr, big contract, contributing right away. Like, these guys are leaving U Sports and getting the big deals. They're not pulling. Unfortunately, Paul Durden had to waste a couple of years in the lower leagues, or national team guys used to go play in Belgium. They're going to Russia. They're going to Italy. Like, they're getting the big boy jobs right away out of university.
Yeah, sorry. What I mean is, you do have 1 or 2 players from each team, maybe from the best teams, who go and get pro contracts, maybe make a jump to the national team right away, who have the ability. But what I'm saying is, coaching a team where you maybe have 1 stud or 1 or 2, and maybe on Trinity you get 3 guys who are destined there in a few years, but the whole team, the whole style of play, the teams you're playing against, now you're playing against 6 studs at an international level. Like, that piece is very different to me. I don't think I doubt his ability to transfer, but I do have to say that the experience of dealing with that pro men dealing with that is invaluable for a national team head coach. I gotta think.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Garrett, and I don't agree with you often, having listened to many of the shows. So I'm starting to question my own integrity now. Maybe I've lost too much sleep with the newborn, but like I would say if they were, if the goal was to, hey, we're going to rebuild this year and we're going to go for 2028, then I would say, yeah, it would make sense. Keep coaching Trinity. Some of those guys that you're coaching now will probably be live and ready to go for 2028. But I would argue if he's going to keep coaching Trinity, some of those guys will likely be on the team for sure. Are they going to be key contributors in starting roles for 2023? I don't know. Like I'm looking at you look at the roster here from last year. Let's assume Gord is truly going to hang up the shoes and not come back for Paris, which I'm going to say he probably makes it back. Every athlete has to retire 3 or 4 times. So I bet you he comes back, but you've still got Hogue around. You've got Marr. I find it hard pressed to say if you're going to tell me you think some folks that are playing at Trinity are going to steal some starting spots from them. So I
bet
think
you Eric Lepke's on that team. I'll bet anything.
Oh,
$1 million I don't even have that he's on that team.
I would agree with that one as well. But are you going to go back to Trinity just to kind of dial in on coaching one player? Or I think, and I just looked it up, TJ did play a season with Arcus, and I'm assuming Glenn was the coach at that time. But I just think, you get that extra year with a setter and you're able to kind of work with him every day, and you can kind of say, hey, here's what I value in an offense. I think we got to establish middle early, or I want middle and pipe over, right? You just get so many more hours where if Ben's just going to log September through to May coaching his Trinity Western guys, and maybe 1 or 2 of which go to the national team, I think it's just an opportunity where you could have been coaching the actual starters you're likely going to have in Paris in some other foreign country.
Yeah. Like think about the life of a university coach and what actual coaching actions they're taking, right? You got to think recruiting is a huge piece. And I mean, nobody would argue that he's not recruiting great players. I mean, there's no doubt. Player development, so taking the players you do recruit and taking to the next level. I mean, those are 2 huge pieces that you spend a lot of your time focusing on as a U Sport coach here in Canada. And those are 2 things you really don't need to do much of as a national team head coach, right? Like you're not trying to recruit you're getting the best of the best who are trying to come to your team, and you're not really necessarily trying to take them. I mean, maybe with the B team, maybe with the junior team, but with the senior team, it's like, no, like the expectation is you're ready to perform at the highest level right now. We're trying to organize this in the best way we can, right?
Well, let's play out this hypothetical then. Let's say what coach was available who fits this mold? Because I agree with you, it's valuable, but I don't think there was a realistic one. And the reason I say that is, let's speculate. Like I'm a real journalist. Probably Dan Lewis had an interview. How do you not consider that guy? He's at FTC. He's been a pro player, but not a lot of coaching experience right now. So maybe Benjo wins that column. We've had international coaches help out on the youth level. Like Glenn's a big Bravo fan, but hearing from some of the youth athletes, amazing technical mind, amazing volleyball mind. The chain went from him speaking Portuguese to one person on the staff who could then translate it to French, to Adam Simak, who converted it to English for the athletes. So if he can't speak English in the huddle, he can't speak French to our athletes. I don't care how smart you are. That's a broken game of telephone. So I don't know if he fits over Benjo. So who else would fit this mold other than a true international, where Lupo on the German side, I know he's doing well in Winnipeg on the university level, but didn't really click with our athletes, didn't really do well. Marcello on the women's side from Italy didn't get the job done. And Antigua didn't leave for volleyball reasons. I believe it was a family reason, but we tried a top level pro coach there, and it wasn't going to work, right? So
I don't think
I agree with you. I just don't think we don't have somebody who fits the mold right now, and that's why I'm over the moon for Benjo.
Yeah, like what do we do? Like what are our Canadian coaches doing that we don't have a ton, maybe close to 0 Canadian coaches going and coaching pro teams? I mean, obviously we don't have a pro league here, but I mean, Glenn did that for years, is still doing it. Is he the only one we have? And was that because he was our national team head coach and then went and played pro because of that clout? Like maybe that is the path for Ben to kind of come in, coach the national team, and then move over to pro, really where he can, just sink his teeth in and get his feet wet. But, do we have any other Canadian coaches coaching pro overseas? I don't know of any.
I know Mike Boston's does, so that's an excuse for us to get him on the show, or he can come on Passin Dimes because he
I'd
is
love
over.
to hear his story.
So he's coached. He was somewhere different last year. I believe he's in Japan this year, but was he in Denmark or something last year? Anyways, he was in Denmark. He won a cup there. But yeah, Garrett, we're a volleyball show, and off the top of my head, I don't think I could name 6. Like, I don't know if there are any. So.
I can't name. You named Mike Boston's great. I could name Glenn Hoag, Mike Boston's. That's my list.
Don't get me wrong. I think I can't list someone better than Benjo. So I'm saying I am totally for thumbs up. I love the idea. And also I like the idea of bringing in, younger coaches, right? I don't necessarily just like hey, let's move our assistant coach to our head coach, because you're just sometimes you're just stuck in that same system, and having that, new younger generation coaching. I mean, you see it a lot in the NFL, right? Like the LA Rams and Sean McVay, like they come in with this new creative mindset, and especially a game like volleyball that's just changed so much in the last 10 years. Why not bring in younger guys that might have a different view, different opinion? Yeah. So I love him. The only other guy I think you could add to the list of potential candidates would probably be Dave Preston. So, I think Benjo's a great call. And I think what I would say is kind of my most valued thing that I want to see in a new coach coming to the team is, can you control the locker room, right? And I think him coming in there and likely going to have quite a few former Trinity Western players already on the team, you've kind of already got, 20, 30% of the locker room bought into you, willing to accept you. Mm-hmm. I don't think it would be hard for that to spread and eventually you have control of the whole locker room. I think you start bringing in completely foreign coaches, and now you've got that situation of, who is this guy? Why is he coming in? I've never seen him before. Maybe they try to adapt too quickly and make too many radical changes. Especially in a 3-year turnaround time, you got to get control of that locker room real quick. And I think having Benjo, who's coached a good chunk of the team that's likely going to be on the roster for 2024, is probably already halfway there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I would say that's probably a challenge for him to come in and have to deal with these adult men, especially the ones who didn't play on his team. But from having talked with him and just over the years dealt with him, it just seems like a guy who speaks to people with respect, tells you like it is, and is well-spoken and never really seems to lose his temper kind of guy, which I know everybody really hates, the guy coming in yelling at everybody. So it just seems like I don't think that's going to be a problem for him. I do wonder, though, what does that look like with him coming in and kind of developing? What's he bringing in terms of the system for the team? How's our team going to play differently? Are we going to play very differently? Are we just going to keep doing what Glenn had those guys doing for the past few years? Is it going to be the Trinity style? Obviously it would need to be different. So then what's it going to look like? I mean, if you're the a new head coach coming into Team Canada, are you coming in and going, all right, guys, we're changing this, and this? Or is it more gradual? What does that even look like? I have no idea.
I think the team has to look different, because as much as I love this guy and I want to see him play again, is TJ Dunn. He's had some gnarly injuries. He sometimes doesn't play pro. So if you take away the setter, hopefully Jay's ready to step in that role, and hopefully he's not getting too old that he can play another cycle. Does that mean Walsh gets a look, or some of these other young setters? So I think the setter really influences the offensive system if we do lose TJ. Losing Gord all of a sudden changes the identity. So the door is open a little bit for guys to fill in, and maybe that is the opportunity to change the system or try new stuff as pieces are moving around naturally. That's maybe the opportunity to make a switch here.
And you might already have a few guys on your starting roster that are used to the system you're bringing in. So the adoption rate might be even quicker than a team that's never played under Benjo.
Right, but is he going to bring in what he does at Trinity? We won't know, I guess, but I'd be curious, okay, you're going to come in, because if it's me, and now I'm not exactly the ideal teammate example for how somebody would deal with their coach. But if I'm there and university coach is coming in bringing his system that he's running with the university team, I would be saying, what the heck are you doing, man? This is pro. These are adult pro men. We're going to run the same thing we did in university. We got to be at least a little bit different, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree, Garrett. I think I'm really curious to see what kind of changes go on to the team, because I could definitely see other people sharing that adoption of that mindset that you're having of, why this feels almost like a step back, right? We're at that international level. Why are we taking a step back? I don't know if he would do that. I don't think he would. I feel like 3 years is too short of a turnaround to start to kind of make extreme changes. I think it might be more of a, I'm going to make some minor adjustments on what I believe. And yeah, Josh, you're going to have to make changes. If you lose TJ and you're going to a new setter, like that's your new quarterback, right? That's a whole quarterback change. You've got to change your offense to adapt to the strengths of your new setter. So there's going to be changes for sure. I guess it's how hard he pushes.
Yeah. Now, we haven't had this situation in a long time where our national team head coach is still an active university coach. And my first thought was like, isn't that a bit of a conflict of interest? Like, do I expect Ben to handle it respectfully? I do. I don't think he's a bad guy, but it makes me wonder, like, is there not some sort of issues there with all the selections? Like, our national team head coach is involved in a lot of stuff, or at least Glenn was. I don't know if Ben's necessarily have that same ability to stick his hands in everything like Glenn did. But, the head coach is around a lot of decisions, junior team selections, summer training programs. There's carding on the table for some of these B team guys. So, is that not a conflict of interest, having the ability to select your own guys from your team for extra training throughout the summers while they're still in university?
I mean, if we're talking conflict of interest, isn't there a player on the national team that shares the same last name as Glenn? I don't think your conflict of interest gets any bigger than that. And I'm not saying I don't believe there was any bias towards there, but I'm saying, conflict of interest at X max was what we kind of just saw with Glenn and his son. But I think it was totally handled professionally, and I would hope that Ben does the same thing as well. But if it comes down to, hey, on the junior team and these two guys are kind of equal, I've seen so many extra hours of this player, so I know, even if he had somewhat of a rough or a shaky tryout, the nod might go to a Trinity Western player. So
yeah, now I wasn't there. I can't confirm this story, but just to show how much Glenn is involved, when Dave Preston was the junior national team coach and there was 3 MAC guys on the team, everyone assumed conflict of interest that Dave picked the team, but it came out afterwards that Glenn selected the team with his evaluation committee and then said to Dave, here's your team. So Glenn was that involved that he's doing his plus minus stats, he's doing his evaluation, that even though Dave was the coach, he didn't get to say, I want McCarthy, I want Marr, I want Danny. It was like Glenn saying, here's your team, and it just happened, oh, here's 3 MAC guys. So if Ben wants to do the same thing where he pulls a Glenn and he's involved at U19, U21, youth, junior, B team, all this stuff, then yeah, you start to raise your eyes and be like, man, that's a lot of Trinity guys, don't you? Even though they are sometimes that much better than the other guys, don't you just honestly go, that's a lot of Trinity guys?
I do.
Trinity guys.
I do, because I'm a bitter asshole. But
I mean, to be honest, even if let's just rewind and say Ben Joe has been the coach for the past 2 years. There's currently a lot of Trinity guys where even if the team stayed the exact same, we'd be like, that's a lot of Trinity guys. But it's been completely unbiased, and Glenn picked those players. It just shakes out. Yeah, they're producing a great crop of guys, and you can guarantee every graduating year, at least one of them is going to the senior national team, and typically more than one.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt that when Glenn was the head coach, there was some conflict of interest there with his kids. There's no doubt that Nick and Chris both had opportunities and training chances with the national team that players whose parents aren't the national team head coach did not have. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, you're going to try to tell me that there's no doubt I had, a leg up on all sorts of other players because my dad ran a pro beach tour. My dad coached our Olympic beach volleyball teams for a few years. That was a less formal position, but I got to train with Marquise when I was 14 years old, a few times. There's no, it just happened. It's almost unavoidable in some ways, and you do your best to manage it. I'm not saying there's anything nefarious there, but at some point, if it's on a bubble and you have a choice between a Trinity guy and a not Trinity guy, you're going to pick the Trinity guy, right? And the rich are going to keep getting richer. That's where my mind goes. They're already dominant. Now, if they get the few, instead of, 4 or 5 players on the national team, now they get 5, 6, 7 players making the B, junior, whatever spread teams. Then it's they're just going to keep being more and more dominant.
Well, I think actually going off of that point, Garrett, if he continues to coach Trinity Western, what's that going to do for recruiting now? How many guys that are, hey, I was deciding between Alberta or Trinity, I'm going to the national team head coach because he's my national team coach. He's gonna help me out there, right?
Yes.
And so I think that could throw the whole
you talk about connections,
the U Sport world.
Hey,
on its head, right?
Yeah, like
if
your university coach is going, hey, yeah, I got a lot of connections. I'll find you a pro spot. We'll get you on the path to the national team. And Ben Josephson, our current national team head coach, says the same thing. You're like, okay, yeah, I mean, I believe this guy.
You do realize I select the national team, right?
I'll get you to the national team. But I mean, he wouldn't say that, but he could. Yeah. He could say that.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, no words need to be said. It's just the optics of it, of any youth player that, you know, if volleyball is their long-term goal. And that's kind of the other issue, I think, now that we're talking it. I think that's the other issue I have if he kind of keeps coaching Trinity is, you know, recruiting classes or anyone that's looking to go volleyball long-term. Oh, I'm just going to go to Trinity because he's my national team coach.
Exactly. Josh, any rebuttal here?
Well, the only bubble I have would be the John Sproul example, and I'm telling you right now, Hawaii's been thumping them. Like UCLA has not won back-to-back championships because the U.S. men's national team coach was at UCLA. So I think kids will still make a decision. I think Trinity does a heck of a job, but there's still a special student goes there, right? Like you typically need to be religious faith to have a good experience there. That they're not gonna. I don't think they have an inside lane on every single athlete. I agree with you. If it's a bubble, if it's like I like UBC, I like Alberta, I like Mac, and I like Trinity, then you're probably the tie goes to Trinity, but I don't think that like there's going to be a long lineup that our whole junior national team is going to be at Trinity. I don't know. I don't see it happening that way.
I mean, I feel like it kind of happened a little bit with Preston and Mac when he was coaching the junior or the youth national team. He got a lot of top recruits went there because with the understanding of this is my junior or youth national team coach. So, I mean, we'll see.
That kind of happens now, though, right? Like if you look at our youth coaches, like Mike Hawkins at UBC is heavily involved, Brock Davidoff at Alberta is heavily involved, Dave Preston does programs, Nate Groenveld. I think the university coaches know, one, to go at a higher level and be part of the Volleyball Canada programs is a good experience, but you get a ripple effect from recruiting, and I think that's why you see the big programs continue to give up their summers and their family time to do a Volleyball Canada program, right?
Because the recruiting benefits.
I think that's a ripple effect for sure.
Yeah, so we got to get, like, if you're a university coach then, but listen to what we're saying, though. If I'm a university coach and I want to be successful, I got to go and take part in national team and get my foot in there so I can have a leg up on recruiters. I feel like that shouldn't be a sentence that we're saying here for our league here in Canada. Don't you think, though? Like, that you got to try to and you know what it's like, Josh, like the politicking and like who even gets picked to coach. And we all know and expect that Ben is a great candidate, but all the positions below that, assistants, all this different opportunities to get your foot in there. Like it's a lot of leveraging and politicking and who you know and kind of getting in there, right? Like that's a bit of a tough game to be playing when you're just a university coach trying to put the best program together that you can.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's right. I think it happens, and it probably happens in every sport. You're telling me Coach K walks into a high school gym that everybody's like, oh, I want to go to Duke, versus like if I'm a coach at West Virginia, I think I'm going head to head with Duke. Like I think there is a bit of a pecking order. I agree with you, Garrett. It's not right in terms of, because you're right. It's not as simple as, oh, you're a good coach, you run a good program, you're going to be the junior national team coach. Like I don't think that's how you get those roles. Like there's obviously an interview process, and you go with who you know sometimes. So. Yeah, it's not a clear-cut thing, but I think there are other ways to recruit. I mean, you guys were top players and you both went to Western, and I'm not sure Jim's been a part of Team Ontario, Team Canada. I think he has like a different path.
Yeah, what were we thinking, Eric? What were we thinking?
Honestly, the decision that went into my going to Western was just, some teams were trying to recruit me as a middle because I played a good chunk of middle at the club. I'm like, I'm 6'4". I'm an undersized middle. I am not a middle player. I am not going to succeed as a middle. Sage opened the door saying, we don't see you as a middle. We see you as a right side, and we're losing our best right side next year. So the position was open. I was like, great, opportunity to start. I'm going here. But one thing you said, Josh, that I actually kind of sparked my interest was around like Trinity is that unique school, very religious, a lot of set rules in place for not just the athletes, but the students that go there. I wonder if that is going to be a difficult transition for Ben Joe of, you have these athletes and these students that are all kind of, the way I understood it, at least when I was there, is you're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to have sex. Like there's a lot of rules set in place on every student at that school. And now you're going to a national team which has a lot of different personalities. And is that going to be a tougher role for him to now manage because those rules aren't in place on those athletes like they were at his school? And now you've got to kind of try to navigate the different personalities and make sure they're putting the team first. I wonder if that'll be a difficult leap for him.
I'm sure that would be a challenge for him, and he's done, national team coaching stuff before, but I'm sure it's a challenge every time, as it would be though when you're used to one thing and kind of a way of operating for such a long time, and then you venture out into a different area. Like it's going to feel different. I think this one. Think about all the schools in Canada going from Trinity to a national team setting in terms of just culture and environment would be one of the starkest changes you could experience, though, right? I gotta think.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, if you're going from, I don't want to pull a school out of my ass, but going from another school, or like if you're at Sherbrooke and you walk down the street to Gatineau or whatever, just a few, it's not, the level's going to be different, but you're not going to exactly feel different in that location. Or you get some of these, great programs out west where it's like the guys are kind of adults running their own life and they don't have these restrictions on them. It's going to feel different. I'm sure he's going to manage it okay, but it is true that would be quite a different, quite a stark change, I feel like.
Yeah, we don't need to name the school, but basically if BMS had a men's volleyball team going from that program to the men's indoor team with Benjo now, it'd be different. It'd be different.
BMS?
You just don't watch BMS? You don't watch Blue Mountain State?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
I was like, is that a Blue Mountain State reference? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So if you were at Western basically and then going to the national team, is that what you're saying, Josh? You got two Western guys, you're taking a shot? It's fair.
Is Western the BMS of U Sports?
Okay,
we partied
you saw the footage from the timeout huddle when we were playing at Nationals, right? You saw that. I mean, you look at one team, it's like, oh yeah, no, you gotta, okay, watch it, talking tactical, and then us, let's go, boys,
let's get a win here, boys, come on.
Maybe Eric had a different experience, but oh yeah, that was us.
We were in that same boat sometimes. Was that the game against Trinity too, Garrett?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
And was that the game you guys beat Trinity?
Yeah, so I will say, I was going to say this at the beginning.
You got to throw Jim Sage's name in the hat of potential head coaches to take over the national team.
Undefeated against Trinity Western, I think. I don't know exact stats, but I was 2-0 against Ben Josephson. So, I mean, not to make it all about me, but I mean, 2 5-set thrillers, though, not exactly a clear-cut beatdown.
But I guess like now that we're kind of going down that path, actually, the one thing that I've kind of always I'm totally on board. I think Benjo's a great choice. The one question where I'm kind of asking myself is, at Trinity Western, how much of it was actually development and building a good team versus your recruiting is just naturally bringing in the top players right now. And it's almost like this thing is momentum is just driving itself. We got top players. We're likely going to win. Because to your point, Garrett, those matchups of you guys beating Trinity Western, did you feel like you guys were underdogs?
It was quite clear that everybody thought we were. I mean,
and I think to me that's I've always, at least the years I've looked, it's always are we overachieving from where we should be based on the roster we have, or are we underachieving? And underachieving might be, hey, we should be getting first place and we got second place. But overachieving could be, hey, we should have gotten knocked out in the quarters and we're going to win the semis. So I just that's the only piece where I'm I don't know. I haven't been to any of Benjo's practices, but it's kind of a little thought in my mind of how much of his success at Trinity was actually developing that program versus, it's rolling in some of the top players right now. And the success almost just naturally comes because you got such good talent on the team.
What?
Yeah, I haven't been in his gym.
Up?
Yeah, I haven't been in his gym, but when Eric Lepke came on our show, Eric Lepke won 18U MVP as a 17-year-old. He was as good of a prospect as there was. And he mentioned in their gym, he changed his spin serve approach. He changed his attacking approach, the way he serve receives. So, even though he was, as good as an 18U player we've seen in a long time, he still got coached up. He still changed some stuff. So that's just one small example that I'm privy to that I think there's some big changes going on where, Eric, we know some schools here in Ontario where good club players go to die, right? They go in and they leave the same player or a little bit worse, where I think Trinity, Benjo's got a good record and a good track record of sending guys to the next level where I believe they're getting better. Do they recruit really well? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, BC, it's so far removed from us in Ontario, especially once you hit the university level, you don't know any of the club players coming through BC. So I have no idea to compare, what were these Trinity Western guys leaving Trinity Western versus when they came in, because I never know. But, your story is definitely kind of checking the boxes there, which is really good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though that is the thing about a university coach is if you get the best players and then you make them better, I mean, that is a winning formula. But what's not necessarily as big a piece in that, I think you're trying to get at, Eric, is like, is he helping his team, the roster, what it is, achieve higher than what they maybe should based on the total skill level? Like, is the sum of the parts greater than the whole? You know what I mean? And, I think, I don't know. We won't really know because we're not in the gym. We don't have that experience as closely. But we might get a chance to see with our national team, with him coaching that team, given, like you said, there's a lot of the same players coming back. So it'll be interesting to see, like, hey, how does the team look? Do we look different? How do we perform? Like, are we struggling to meet where we were? Now there's a few players who have left, but are we going to be able to fill that? Like, I think it'll be an interesting time to really see and evaluate, like, hey, are you able to kind of keep this program going at its level, right?
Yeah, like I think ultimately to put this team in a position where everyone thinks it can go and wants it to go, you're going to have to come up with some big upsets through your career. You're going to have to come up with it through like World League, through the various leagues. You're going to have to beat the Brazils at some point. And, maybe, you're not going to beat them every time, but maybe in 6 games, you're beating them at least 3. You're going 3-3, or you're going to have to beat the USAs, the Russias, the Polands. Like, those are the wins, like squeaking out those kind of, I'll call them upset wins, are what's going to kind of put you in a good position to break through that quarterfinal roadblock and to potentially put them on the podium in Paris. So the only way you can do that, like you said, Garrett, is you got to have a team where, is just totally united and the sum of their parts they're greater than in the individuals.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Man, I think I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like because, and hopefully we get a chance to watch. I don't know. That's always been a challenge for me is actually watching this until they get to the Olympics. So hopefully we'll get a chance to tune in. Josh, you'll have to keep me updated.
When's Passin Dimes going to get some live streaming of these international competitions?
As soon as they start paying us, buddy. We'll be there. So never is what we're saying.
I was actually really happy, though. Like, I remember going back to... maybe it was the last time they were at the Olympics, but I was like, why am I only seeing 3 Canadian national team games and I'm watching the 21st event of swimming again? So I was really happy with the coverage we had this last Olympics. I feel like every single game was on either the Sportsnet or CBC channel. It was awesome to see. It
was very awesome. We got to see a lot of it. So I'm hoping that continues. I'm hoping the streams continue as well. So we shall see. If you're still listening, thank you so much. Hit that subscribe button. Hit us up on YouTube. I forgot to mention at the start of the show, Josh. I'm losing my touch 100%. What am I doing? You had something else you wanted to talk about, Josh, because you got 2 Western guys here. So you wanted to maybe pick our brains a little bit and get inside the mind of an alpha player on a team. You got 2 great examples right here.
Yeah, you say alpha. I mentioned to you being like the guy.
Yeah, I said alpha. That's my word.
So you guys didn't cross paths. I don't think you were in the gym that often. I think Eric left as Garrett was entering. But one thing that you each told me on once again, cheap plug for our other show, Passin Dimes Podcast, check it out. But you both had to advocate for your own career. And if anybody's ever read Nick Nurse's book, he's really high on players need selfish goals that meet the team goals. And what I mean by that is, Eric, you mentioned you were recruited as a middle and Jim told you you're going to play right side. But there was a point in your career where Jim wanted to get the best 6 guys on the court and you were all of a sudden in the middle. You had to advocate for yourself to get back on the outside. And sure enough, player of the year type season out there. And Garrett, you would do similar things in your career where if you were across the net from maybe somebody of my blocking ability, you'd be like, Jim, this isn't helping us get better. I need to be across the net from so-and-so. So I'm curious.
If you lined up against me across the net, I would be shouting and screaming. I might boycott the practice at that point. So yeah, you're right.
But anyways,
actually, I remember listening to Garrett talk about that. I can't remember who was on your guys' show, but I was like, that is the exact mindset I have. If you're giving me one blocker, okay, great. I'm going to try to tool you every single time. I was always trying to how can I stack the odds against me so I can actually use this situation where, I could hammer across and score 90% of the time, but let me try to do something else and improve an ability. So I remember listening to that episode. I was like, once again, that was another situation. Rarely happens, but I agreed with Garrett.
So did you ever because it sounds like you were pushing for yourself to change position, which is something I heard a lot. When I was on the team, there was always guys trying to jockey their position and play something a little bit different, mostly middle, sometimes the right side trying to pass, whatever. But in that situation, you never spoke up and were like vocal about changing the drill, you'd actually just internalize it and be like, okay, no, I'm going to change my behavior to make sure I get the best out of the situation?
Yeah, I'd say that was where we differed. Is more of the time I would say, okay, what can I do to make this drill more stacked against me where I can get more out of it? And actually, Garrett, we had a training session one time with I was playing with Aaron and you were playing beach with Dan Deering.
Yeah.
And I think Dan was just having an awful day. Couldn't pass, right? Couldn't hit a ball in the court. And we just kept serving you either way. And I remember your dad comes up to me like we're getting a water break. He's like, why are you serving Garrett? Dan can't do anything. I'm like, that's great, but we're practicing. And if we just serve Dan off the court, I'm not getting any better.
I remember that too. Yeah.
I'm like, so why don't I just go at Garrett and we can actually work on defense and trying to improve. Like when I'm in practice, like I don't care about winning in a sense. I would rather stack the odds against me, find something to work on, knowing that I'm still going 100%, but ultimately the score at the end of the day didn't matter to me. It was how much did I improve during that drill.
So were you the loudest guy at practice then, or was it mostly not actually? You were just kind of focused to doing your own thing?
It was a mixture. If I felt like we were not in that mindset of, yay, we're going 100%, I definitely spoke up. But there was like, if everything was going very well, you could tell everyone was putting in top level effort. The team on the other side of the net was putting up a good fight, keeping balls alive and actually allowing us to get better. Yeah, I was like, okay, great. I can work on my stuff. Everyone's delivering what they're supposed to deliver right now. But when it got out of hand, I think I was pretty quick to speak up.
To your point, Josh, like about advocating for yourself, like I always had a tough time, definitely my first 2 years, like, and that's, a 17, 18-year-old coming in the first, and then 18, 19-year-old in your second year, like just speaking up to these adults and like really when something you're feeling is not right, to actually vocalize that and have the confidence to kind of step out. Because at that age, I was one of our better players, if not our best player, but I felt so uncomfortable to do that. But in my third and fourth years, when I had kind of had more time with the team, I felt way more comfortable to do those things. And it definitely helped. Like one of my biggest regrets is that in my first year, I wasn't able to just come in and actually assert some things that I thought were important to me. For example, like a classic thing we did was always like starters versus, bench. We call it the box squad. Starters versus box. And that wasn't great all the time. Like sometimes you need your starters to like work together and do some side out, but at other times you want to like mix it up and have it be a little bit even so you challenge each other. And in my third and fourth years, that was something I was shouting hugely. Like if we were ever doing a drill that was like not just side out, it'd be like, no, we can't do this. Like even put me on the other side. Like we got to mix this up, and like being quite vocal about that, because there's no point in like us just stacking the deck in one side. Nobody's really going to get any better, right?
So you're both coaches. Where's the line now? Like, Garrett, would you receive that well from a young guy on your team? Like, when does it come off as selfish or disruptive versus like, hey, that's a really good input. Everybody's going to get better if we do it this way, versus this is Garrett didn't want to do the drill today, so now he's just going to like throw a fit,
Sounds like me, yeah. Yeah, I don't know where the line is. I mean, I think respect is a big thing, right? Like, I don't think I was ever disrespected. I mean, I did cross the line a few times, definitely get upset and, speak to somebody disrespectfully. But respect is a big piece, right? Like, if you say to your coach respectful, like, hey, I'm not going to get any better hitting it. Like, I want to hit against our top defense and not hit against our, bench team. Like, there's a reason these guys are on the court. I want to hit against this. And that's a respectful way. Like, I think you only run into trouble when both people are not listening, if the coach just goes, yeah, whatever, well, that's a problem. And if I am not willing to say, coach has got this idea, I'm unwilling to accept that, well, that's not really great on my end either, right?
Tough with communication. I mean, I definitely didn't feel like I was in Garrett's position in my first year. Like I felt like I was the sixth man on the court. So it was, I kind of knew my role at that point of like, like I'm just going to let these grown men kind of run the show. I know where I fit in the pecking order here. And then when I started to move up that chain, I was older. So when I was able to speak, it would listen. But yeah, I think it kind of comes down to respect. And There is different mindsets to it, and like, obviously you're not just trying to get one person better on the court. You have different theories of, okay, I want to get these guys better. But I think as long as you can validate that, like if you can tell me, hey, here's what I'm trying to achieve out of this goal, Garrett. I'm not trying to get you a better hitter. I'm trying to work on, the timing of our middles off of your pass with Sean. And then it's like, okay, great. Now I can actually understand what you're trying to achieve with this. I think being able to explain the whys is a big thing as a coach, especially when you're kind of trying to control a gym and lay out some drills. Yeah. But yeah, it was like there was nothing worse than, I remember in my early years, the starter versus box squads. It was like, why are we even doing this? But then towards my fourth and fifth year, we had a very strong box squad, which was a lot of the guys that were on the starting court with you, Garrett, which is why we were able to achieve those. We started to improve drastically because we had such strong players on the other side of the net that could actually challenge us and beat us in some practices.
Yeah. A big thing too I used to find was like playtime was a huge concern for a lot of people, including me. Like I don't know if you felt this way, Eric, but when I was at my peak, I never came off the floor, like never. And that was something that even in club I wasn't used to. Like at least in club, I would come off sometimes and take a rest or get somebody else in and kind of keep the momentum going. And like in my third year, I didn't come off once. I was happy because I was racking up the points like, hey, yeah, get me to the top. But at the same time, in my fourth year, we learned the lessons that like, no, everybody's going to feel way more invested in this goal if like you get that kind of swap off. And B, I'm not going to be stressing myself too much all the time, like being on the court 100% of the time. Even a small thing such as like at an exhibition tournament, like saying, hey, coach, like this is how many games I think I should play. If you want me to play them all, I'll play them all. But like, these are probably 2 games you could probably give me off if you're thinking about it, and I'm going to be okay. Even that, I think like as a coach, if I were to hear that, I'd be like, that's amazing. Like one of my top players has come to me saying like, I'm okay taking these off. I may not do it, but now I know that if I do that, they're not going to be pissed. Everybody's going to feel a lot better, right? Or the other thing was, through the back row, like going to serve and go through the back row sub, like just a simple thing to like check out for a bit and then check back in was something I found is not natural for a lot of coaches that I had to ask for myself to get, just because I knew that was beneficial for me and the team. You know what I mean? Like that's a tough thing for a coach to do without the okay of their top player.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to necessarily, you don't know if you're rocking the boat and putting them out. But I think I didn't really hit that level until like my fourth year. And it was really more just a mindset of, I love to play the game. I was like, I just want to play. I want to play. I want to keep playing. I want to keep playing. So if you're going to leave me, like, I would never put up a fuss if I got subbed out during a game where we're up 20-10. The one thing I always told Jim, I was like, if you pull me out, just don't put me back in. Like I cool down, especially in my later years. I was like, I cool down so quick. I do not want to like be getting warmed back up. So if you yank me, like I'm done for the night. So, or like ideally, there's a situation where if things start going sour, I'll go back in, but don't pull me in the second set with an idea of putting me back in the third. So, but yeah, I think that's huge, right, Garrett? Like those guys on the box squad, they're looking for those couple of points they get to play. They're looking for like that set or two they get to play sprinkled throughout the season. And that's what's kind of their motivation to play and work hard in practice, because maybe I can beat out my other buddy on the box squad and I'm the one that gets in there and gets those points. Yeah. So I think that's super critical for team morale and being able to just elevate the level at practice. But you're right, you got to have the leaders that are getting pulled out need to make sure they're on board and they understand that global goal.
Yeah. So that was a helpful thing I felt like I could do as kind of the guy. But the thing I always had the biggest challenge with, Josh, and I don't even still have a great answer for it, is like when I'm looking around at my teammates and I know because of my performance, my word holds weight, right? Because I'm scoring all the points, when I say something, I know even if people disagree, they won't tell me to shut up immediately. Whereas it's not necessarily the case if you're like fresh face on the squad, you're not even that good, you barely made it type thing. And there's a pecking order. But talking about other players and trying to campaign for other players was always tough. Like we had a few battles in my years that were super tight between like the M2 and the M3 and the P2 and the P3. not ever really the setter, but like those two positions were hotly contested, as I'm sure they are on a lot of teams, right? Like I'm sure many teams are like that. But, you know, what do I say to try to keep this battle healthy and keeping everybody good when maybe one guy's getting all the time and the other guy's getting none? You know, where's my place in that? Is it up, like, this guy's, you know, campaigning for himself, but do I support that? Like, what do? I don't have a great answer. I never really figured it out. And I think as a result, like, a few of our bench guys ended up being bitter for the success of the guys who were in ahead of them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a great answer there. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, that's tough. And you know what? I don't feel like we had much of that the years I played. I felt like there was a lot of buy-in on, hey, you know what? The success of the team is my success as well. But I've definitely seen a lot of teams, you know, not just on the men's side, on the women's side, where you can literally tell they would rather be on the court and lose the game than sit on the bench and watch the team win. And it just, like, I just bite my lip. I'm like, oh, that's like such a bad attitude to go into like a high level sport. Like, keep that in 18U club ball. Like, that's, you know, that's where it belongs. But once you hit this level, it's like you got to buy into the team. And the one thing I did like about Jim, though, is he would, like, when there was those tight battles, I remember he would always ask me about, you know, what do you think? Like, who should we go with? Yeah, there was, like, I did get a lot of that input of, you know, what do you think in here? And we had some of those tough decisions during my fifth year was when Hinchy was gone and Sean had come in as a first year. There was a lot of, you know, is Sean ready? Can we get him in? And it's like, yeah, let's give the kid a try. And then it's like, yeah, it's not working. Let's go back. Sean was pretty young. He wasn't as good as a player as when he left. But there was, like, we definitely tried to get him going.
I think players should feel free to make suggestions, Garrett. I think when they try to influence the decision, like I appreciate like asking players, and if they tell me like the M2 who's going to get what 6 balls a set, if they're better at closing blocks, or if they're a better energy guy, or if they're just something that like there's a feel on the court they bring, then like that's valuable as a coach. If you're just advocating for your buddy, I don't really have a lot of time for that. Like remember when we had Grosinger on the show, Garrett, and he's talking about like how he doesn't really, I shouldn't say, I should choose my words better, but paraphrasing, he doesn't really value the P2 position that much, Eric, because he's gonna ride his right side and then he's gonna go to his P1. So he wants certain things out of his P2 where he doesn't need his P2 to get 11 kills, right? So it's just certain systems or tactics or what do you look for in the tiebreaker between those position battles? Because if the P2 comes down to like a guy who's going to jump and get a lot of bombs, but versus a guy who's going to get digs and pass half the court, maybe sometimes like one overpowers the other based on what your system is or what the other guys on the court are looking for from that role.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Like, that's totally fair. But at some level, like if you're thinking about if you have two tightly contested positions and, you know, what should the playtime breakdown be there? Should the breakdown be the guy who has the slight edge gets 100% of the playtime and the other guy gets 0? Does that make sense? I mean, I feel like that's a trend in our sport that is often the case. Like, you know, if the guy's a little bit better, they get all the playtime because they're a little bit better. We got to put our best foot forward. Whereas there's not like, it probably should be 60-40 or even 55-45. And then you see over time, you know, really where it ends up. Like, especially in a sport where we have league play, where the stakes night after night are high. You got to win, but also you're going to end up where you're going to end up. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to, you maybe lose. You're going to lose a game because you didn't put your best P2 out there, but the guy, you know, like, no, you're not. So, like, can you share the time a little bit there? You probably should, but we don't see that a lot in our sport, I feel like.
That was actually one thing at Western that I feel like we probably put too much emphasis on winning every single league game.
Yeah.
And I think at some point that sacrificed our ability, the level we could have been at come playoffs. And I one season in particular, I remember when Mac, like, it seemed like it was the year Max started to commit to this really fast ball outside. And they were bad during the season. But it was like, and this was like, I was in my third year and I was just a stupid third year player who didn't really understand this until I got a little older, where it was like, no, they were like committing to this process of we're going to go through learning pains, but come playoff time, we're going to be clicking on this. And it doesn't matter that we lost 7 games earlier on because we were trying new things out or because we were trying new players, because we were trying to figure out our actual lineup. I think we definitely put too much emphasis on, no, we got to win every single league game.
Yeah.
And I definitely think it hurt some of our potential that we could have achieved come playoff time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Nah, I felt that too. Like you watch teams like struggle at the beginning of the year and then kind of are competing at a high level at the end of the year. And it's like, okay. I mean, not many teams did that. I will say that is the outlier, I think, of teams who actually have the ability to have good players who can like try this high level thing and then build to it. Doesn't happen as often because I just think you don't have the ability. I don't know if you did this when you were there, Eric, but Jim used to always, when two players were having a tight position battle, would always room them together. They were always the roomies in the hotel. And I thought, at my first thought was, this is so stupid. But then after a while, I was like, no, actually, like, this makes a lot of sense. Like, now that guy's not going and bitching to his teammate in the other room about how he didn't play. This, they're actually got to have a relationship. So, like, in my first year, I was with Alan Screeton pretty much every away trip we stayed, because that was it was like P2,
you were
P3.
battling him.
He did that every time, and I feel like it helped. I don't know, but like I just thought that was hilarious how he always did that. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if you can get the two players to a point where they're supporting whoever's on the court, like I think that's when you've achieved the ultimate. Like your players have fully bought into the system. Like when Screeton can finally cheer and support you while you're on the court, and if you get subbed out for a bad game, you're fully behind him. Like that's when you've got the players bought in. So maybe that comes from rooming them together on every trip.
Maybe, I don't know. So Josh, on this show though, like have you learned anything about advocating for yourself on this show?
For sure.
That was where we started.
Yeah, I think the communication point comes down to it. I think where maybe things boiled over for you, Garrett, is there's a time and place, right? So if you're very emotional, maybe you're not going to be like hurt or it comes off as selfish, where really you just wanted the best for you and the team. And you realize that I was listening to a podcast the other day that like Brett Hall got away with a lot of stuff as an NHL player. And the reason his coaches allowed it is because he had a different type of pressure. He wasn't a normal dude and he was expected to score like 50 or 60 goals a season. So maybe Garrett deserves to be able to throw a tantrum in practice because he's going to get set 40 times a game.
Painting me with this brush that I was a guy who had tantrums in practice? No, it was targeted strike. I was never a guy who lost my cool, Josh. Don't paint me with this brush for the fans at home.
There's a different kind of pressure, and I think sometimes that comes with a different type of behavior, and that's okay sometimes. But if it's communicated properly, or to Eric's point, if the coach can counter and say, we're working on this, this, and this, so it doesn't really matter who's across the net because we're working on you passing for this middle's rhythm or this stuff, like you can gain some understanding where you just kind of get this story stuck in your head and you start like thinking everyone's against you. It's not usually true.
So that mentality indoors that not many people have because it's such a formalized coach thing, that's the mentality you have to have on the beach to be successful. Like you 100% need that to be successful. There's no coach, it's you and one other guy. So like if you're not out there making the best training environment for yourself, no one's going to do it for you. So I mean, like forget being the guy, like the guys who always had trouble working with a team indoors, you sometimes find they do okay on the beach, right? Like, because they're advocating for themselves and maybe that pisses people off. But on the beach, you need that. Like what I would love to see in a beach practice with say 8 guys is like, if something's not going right and people aren't getting the most out of it, somebody's not happy about that. Like there's got to be some sort of advocating. They're like, no, we got to change this. Coach, what are we doing? This is garbage. Like, we got to move this on so we can all get better. Like that's the type of thing I would really love to see our beach teams get to. Because I know when I was there, it was not like that.
Just leads to going through the motions. Like we had a good team meeting the other week talking about like something can't be implied. Like it needs to be explicitly said. Like I think sometimes you tell athletes, oh, you need to behave professionally. Well, what does that mean? Like for us, it means like we're starting our first drill at this time. So figure out how long your warm up needs to be. But like the drill starts here. We're not peppering and doing stuff at an 8 o'clock practice at 8 o'clock. Like 8 o'clock is the start of practice, not like the time you arrive. Right. So we're just going over the top now that we have like a new squad and new guys coming in that like it's very explicit. So we can get rid of that stuff because if you're having those conversations 4 months into your program, it's just harder to change, right? So nothing is implied. Let's go over the top, over communicate, like get it out of the way now so we can start talking about performance when the schedules hit and we got competitions coming up in March.
Well, yeah, that would be no problem if you get a little May Simon action coming in there, taking on those guys. There'd be nothing unsaid, that's for sure.
Coming out of retirements here.
That'd be nothing unsaid. It'd be a loud practice, that's for sure. You'd be hearing everything you need to hear, Josh.
That's the only way you guys would win a drill right now is just by punching guys in the mind, because I don't think you could do it tactically right now. I don't think.
Well, tactically, yes. Technically, yes. It's physically that is the concern at the moment. Like, what are you talking about? Technically, oh yeah, I can still pass. Technically, tactically, I know what to do. Can I do it though? Is the thing. I don't know. You in good shape, Eric?
Not where I was before.
Yeah, same. All right. So, okay. No, it would be an interesting experiment to see where it would be at, Josh, with these young
You're
bucks.
always welcome, guys.
You got some big units, though, on the squad, and I'm not sure I'd be ready to handle that. Like, I could take on a bunch of young, short guys, no problem. But a big dude with a block, that would be tough in this moment.
What are you talking about? Let's go Deering Shachter right off the hop. Set the tone there.
I mean, I would love to take out those guys, but I think that ship has maybe sailed, Josh.
We won't know until we try, guys.
The only way we would stand a chance is if I started to get in Schachter's head about his golf game. That's the best way I could do it.
Nice. Okay. We got to be careful, though. I'm not sure if any of their opponents listen to getting these guys in Germany chirping Schachter about his golf game overseas. Well, this is how it goes, Eric. Is this what happened last time you were here when we lost the episode? We just kind of got to the end and fizzled out?
Just fizzled out. Well, actually, so when you were talking about Garrett throwing tantrums, the one event that I remember sticks out in my head about me too. We were in a serve and pass drill, and our servers were just like going 100% ace or error. And me and Pat are sitting there like, this isn't getting us any fucking better.
That is classic, though. Serve and pass, guys just missing or crushing.
And it drives me nuts. And you know what? Like, I feel like it's usually, like, painting with a broad stroke, I feel like it's usually middles. And it's because, like, hey, I never get to pass. I don't know what it's like. I'm just going to work on my serve as hard as I can.
Yeah, Phil James, I'm sorry for calling you out. Phil was renowned for this. Phil James.
So this was a Phil James story. And so,
okay,
in his first year, and I'm passing out a 1, and it's been like him and Matt Waite, just been ace, error, and their floats are really hard. When they're in, they are a nightmare to pass.
Oh, yeah.
And he hits me with a float outside my body to the right, and I go and I shank it into the stage, into the curtain, and I just continue with my momentum, wound up and just punched one of the water bottles full of ice and water, sprays all over the court, and all you hear, and it's just like dead silence in the gym, like what just happened? And then all you hear is Luke Sim, hey, that was my bottle. And then everyone just like bursts out laughing, and it was like, all right, like timeout, go get water. And I'm just like, guys, we can't keep doing this fucking ace or error. Like none of us are getting any better.
Yeah.
And then it was like a much different tone coming out of that water. But oh yeah, there was like, I was good for like at least 1 or 2 of those a year of just like complete snap, punt a ball into the roof or something like that. It was.
Well, that is the drill that will do it for you. Because I mean, I never snapped. I would just leave it. Like if there was a player who I was noticing was doing ace or miss, like just crush it, I just step out. I'd be like, I'm not. No, you want to do this to me? I'm not. I'm gonna do this to you. Like this is not how this works. Like. So that was but I never did smash a water bottle. Man, that is nice. And I'm glad it was Luke's though. I think
it was a beautiful sight. Like from my end, it just ice and water just exploded everywhere like fireworks. Like you kind of painted a better picture.
Nice. Yes. Well, glad to hear it. So Josh, that's the kind of thing you need to see on the beach with these guys. What would you do? Would you like be pissed, or would you like get it if it was made sense?
I think where we are at a program right now, Garrett, I'm like, I would like to like push enough buttons that we can get an outburst. Like we have not had a good outburst in a long time. Nice. Where like guys are just going through the motions, or they talk to you afterwards and they're like, that wasn't very good. I think sometimes in the moment you got to put everybody on notice that that's not okay. We're not getting better, and it's okay to have a little Garrett May tantrum every once in a while.
I mean, Garrett May tantrum. You just said it was an Eric Simon tantrum. You're kind of Garrett May tantrum. I'm gonna have a tantrum on this show if you keep doing that.
Yeah, there we go. You're about to see it.
All right, guys.
But yeah, you're right, Josh. Like at the end of the drill, it's too late. The drill's over. Your opportunity to get better is gone. You've lost those 40 minutes, 2 hours. Like that needs to be addressed earlier. And you know what? The reality is I probably should have addressed it earlier. I let it boil up so much where the only outlet was punching a water bottle. If it had just been like a guy's, probably could have been handled in a much more civilized situation, middle of the drill. But, yeah, it was what it was.
I'm looking forward to Josh, you using the punching a water bottle as kind of a metaphor to the guys, but they don't realize that it's actually literal. Like, no, like we're trying to get to a punch or water bottle moment here. Like we're pushing ourselves, and they think it's a metaphor.
Next practice is just going to be
it's just lined up
water bottles just sitting here.
I need to know, was it one of the
Caps half
Gatorade, like,
screwed on.
that's what I mean, though. You probably punched like a plastic Gatorade one. Our guys have like the metal ones that keep them cold for 12 hours and all that stuff. Like, they're going to hurt themselves if they just start punting their water bottle.
Yeah, okay.
It was a Yeti.
No, it was not. It was not.
Yeah, it was like the white Gatorade bottles. Yeah, and the cap flew off and everything too. So
yeah, you got to get some of those.
Don't recommend it
Josh.
on your Nalgene's or your Yeti bottles.
Yeah, you got to get some of those disposable water bottles just because it's a great prop for just punishment.
Yeah.
Well, great story, Eric. And I mean, thanks for
felt
joining
bad
us.
after.
This is how
I
the
felt
show
real.
goes. We get to the end and we either don't want to end or we're sick of each other. We'll leave that unspoken. But thanks for joining us. And that's how the show, I mean, hopefully we don't lose this one this time. So for your second time, did we do better than the first? I mean, we dropped some fat.
I like this better, yeah. I thought this was better. I felt it was a little more authentic. You know, I don't feel like there was, intentional having to go against each other. I felt it was like a natural kind of open discussion full of lots of opinions. And we got deep, right? Like, I was surprised we could talk about Ben Joe and our national head coach for so long. But we
Yeah, I
did
guess
it.
we all had a lot of thoughts around that, I guess, as coaches. I hope volleyball turns into like curling, because curling, that's what people do. They just watch and critique the strategy, what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
So maybe we can help further get volleyball to that moment where we sit around, have a beer, and just judge whatever the heck's happening on the court
No,
at the
should've
time.
We can be
Done this.
leaders on that. We can be leaders in our sport on just judging everyone else.
Absolutely, and I'm so game for that. Well, so that'll do it for this episode. If you guys are still listening, thank you so much. I mean, get out there, do some coaching, or play some volleyball or something. But thank you for listening. Eric, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having
I don't
me.
know, 5-star the podcast. Hit us up on YouTube, Sharp Cuts Volleyball, all that great stuff.
Share us your Spotify stuff. The amount of messages I'm getting that we're like number 1 or like top 5 on people's list, Garrett. There's been 3. I mean, the amount of messages I'm getting. There's been 3 people who reached out that like we're on their Spotify list, which is awesome.
See, we should have said that at the beginning. We kind of blew it because now I know from the stats that only 5% of people who watch the YouTube video are still watching at this point. So if that's you,
Lisa Tam is for sure watching
thank
right
you
now. I'll
so
bet it.
much. Thank you.
But you know what? It might be me, but only because I listen to you guys when I'm cutting the grass and going on bike rides. And my grass cutting usually ends at 40 minutes, and the bike rides, I'll get a full episode in on a bike ride. But
Okay, so get on some more bike rides here because we need that extra.
yeah, there we go.
Nah.
It's too cold out now, man. My hands freeze on the handlebars.
Yeah, shoot, you're not gonna be listening to the show for a while because all the snow on the ground and
I
it's too cold
shovel
to bike.
snow. When I shovel snow,
Okay,
I got
nice.
you guys in the ear.
All right.
Maybe put it on 1.5 times so you can like condense the episode
I
in.
do.
Okay.
That's a good hack for all those listeners out there. Throw it on 1.5 times. You get through an hour episode in 45 minutes, I guess.
So that must be the people listening right now, though, who put it on 1.5
2 times
times
speed even
to make it to the end. So if I talk really fast, can you really understand what I'm saying? Because it's going really, really, really fast at the moment. Or does it, like, should I slow down and do I, you know what? We're not going to go down this road. I got to end this episode before we get even more off topic. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see
Thanks.
you.
Let me know when I can come back, folks.
We will not, because you're good. We'll see you next time.